what I tell everybody at mid-year is just don't make a bad impression. We talk to so many people so quickly that I truly, and I'm somebody who's really good with faces and names, but I truly remember very few people at mid-year that I talked to because they wowed me. I do remember the people who made a bad impression. You walk out of Showcase and you say, man, I really don't feel like I impressed anybody. As long as you don't say, oh my gosh, I totally rubbed her the wrong way, you probably did a just fine job. What program directors really view mid-year is about you getting information about us so that you can decide if these people seem like decent humans and I can work with them for a year. Right. This program really meets X, Y, and Z, which is the most important to me. That's what mid-year is about. Mid-year is not about us saying, oh my gosh, that was the most perfect candidate that I talked to for 5 minutes, right? We do that at the interview. And I'm going to be impressed that as a student you were involved in your state organization, because that's a totally different being to me than MSHP or than ASHP. Right. Because at MSHP, you don't have to be involved in that. You don't have to come there. That's above and beyond and extra. So I really view that as for me, that's a more important kind of thing because I call my residency my fourth child and MSHP is my fifth. So that is such an important thing to me, and the fact that we don't have a ton of student involvement in it. So the fact that you got involved as a student and you came and talked to me shows to me that you're really a go-getter.
To me, not really that much different. To me, all that I gather from that is a negative interaction. So as long as you are not throwing up any huge red flags to me, I probably won't remember you because there's so many people I meet. But then that doesn't give me so essentially I only write down names or business cards from people that really gave me a negative interaction so that I know when they apply to me that I make sure I note that when we're looking at their packets. But if somebody came up and was completely great and fine, I don't really at that moment put extra weight on them because there's hundreds of people that you meet, but I definitely would put more on it when I see their application. But it's more of trying to weed out any negative interactions that I get in person. So I don't really think it matters whether it's at PPAG or whether it's at a state meeting or whether it's at mid-year. If you come up and ask appropriate questions and don't have any red flags, then I kind of interact with you and kind of move on. There might be a handful of people I might remember just because of something specific that we talked about, but don't specifically make notes that this person has to come on site just because there's so much I don't know about them and about the other people, but it's really more of a way to make sure it's actually more for you guys to get to know about us if you want to apply. And then I just use it as did anything negative come up interaction wise or something that was said that would maybe make me want to take note of that. But otherwise, I don't think that's what make or breaks you.
Well, the main reason we go to mid-year is basically the showcase.
Yes.
From a psychological standpoint, it's everybody's invited to the party, and now it's up to you. Do you want to go to the party or not? And for these candidates, these students, if you're not there, what's their interpretation of that? And so we try to do the best we can to provide the best and the most optimal, current, up-to-date and information that is unique for our program as compared to the other programs that's there at the showcase over a 3-day or 2-day period. Out of respect, there's a lot of students that can't afford to go to mid-year. It could be financially, it could be test time. So we have in our program, we go to the local showcases too, and that's a way of helping out the candidates. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars go to mid-year, and so we are very careful that is equal because people think well, if I didn't go to mid-year, then I'm going to be a half a step behind, but that's not our approach.
I view mid-year more as a benefit for the candidate than an actual program.
Okay.
To be honest, we often will have candidates sign in at our booth just so we can see who attended and who did not. And you either have, and usually to be very memorable. You have to stand out in a very negative way. So really, in my opinion, the mid-year showcase is more a benefit for the candidate to approach us and ask more specific questions to see if our program can meet their needs, get a gauge maybe for how we interact with each other and our personalities to see if they really want to work with us every single day for the next year. Yes, usually at the ICHP annual meeting in the fall, we usually have a booth for our residency program at that meeting as well that our residents run. So again, usually our residency directors are not usually at that showcase, but the residents usually take attendance and will talk to potential candidates about the program as well. So yeah, they're more than welcome to come and ask questions.
I always tell students that the point of going to these large residency shows really an opportunity to make a big impression on a program, because honestly, we're there to market who we are to whoever might be interested. And so I know a lot of students tend to get really nervous when they go to showcases because they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing or they're going to make a bad impression. But I think that if students really take that opportunity to ask questions that they're really curious about and not feel like they have to ask questions that they were told to ask because it's quote unquote a good question, is really important. And so, I really love talking to potential candidates, especially if we cross paths again in the on-site interview and beyond. But just because I didn't talk to a candidate also doesn't mean that I completely put their application aside. So I think if I had to give one piece of advice, I would say if students can really focus on what they need to get out of a residency showcase, that's the most important thing.
Like me as an RPD, I totally understand that. Mid-year's freaking expensive.
It is.
And I get my boss pays for mid-year. It's not any money out of my pocket, but as a student, I remember putting that on the credit card. I might still be paying that off, right? No, I'm finally out of credit card debt. So don't feel like you're going to be a credit card debt that long. But it was one of those things where it was just okay, I don't have a choice. I have to go and let's just put it on the charge card, right? So I understand that it's expensive and that not everybody can do it. Really, I don't ever go back and look at the applications I get and look to see if I talk to you at mid-year.
Okay.
Some people I'll be like, oh yeah, I talked to them just because I'm good with names. If you can't go to mid-year, just sending me a simple email and saying, I'm really interested in your program. I've reviewed all of your stuff online. Here are the questions that I would have wanted to ask you if I could have come to mid-year. Do you have a second to answer them?
Okay.
And just doing it all over email would be fine. I can tell you that I'm not going to make a special appointment for people to come in and see St. Mary's and all that before the interview, because it has gotten so competitive. If I did that for one person, I would do that for 100 people.
Yep.
So I don't have time for that.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
I actually had this come up this year. There was a candidate that was unable to travel for some personal reasons that really wasn't going to get to go to mid-year. And she reached out to see if she could have a phone call with me just to ask questions about the program to see if she wanted to apply. And so I was happy to do that with her. I actually brought one of my residents with me so that if she wanted a resident perspective on a question that they could. So me and her and the resident just had a teleconference and just answered all of her questions. And so I'm always happy to do that for somebody. I don't want them to think that not going to mid-year is a red flag, because there's definitely reasons that people can't go. But definitely it was a way for this person to be able to ask all the questions that somebody would normally ask to decide whether or not they wanted to apply. So we definitely can accommodate that.
Yeah, I would suggest, the ASHP residency directories are available, and all the program directors' contact number, either phone number or email, is always listed there. Because you got to reach out and be proactive and take the initiative to reach out to the programs, because from our perspective, we don't know who's interested with us or who's not. So that would be the first thing I would, if they can't, attend a national or local meeting, or it just doesn't work out. So there's that directory that ASHP does a good job providing for all students.
There's probably a couple things they could do. One is if they have a rotation at our site, I would encourage them to treat the rotation like a residency interview, the whole 5 weeks long. And they can always try to maybe schedule a meeting after their rotation day one day to talk to our PGY1 residency director to ask about specific questions they have about the residency or just pros and cons of doing a residency. So that's definitely something they can do. And then there's always just the traditional email too. All of our contact information is available online on the ASHP residency directory, so they're more than welcome to get our email address and send any specific questions they have that way as well.
I think even if I don't see them at ASHP mid-year, we still will review their application and see if they're a good fit for our program. But I think, students sometimes may feel uneasy about reaching out to a program director. But I think anything that isn't readily available on our website or on our marketing materials on the ASHP directory is fair game to ask about. Sure. So if a candidate, really wants to know more about our program in terms of what types of opportunities there are that wasn't listed on our website, or if they have specific questions about our past programs and what they want to accomplish, I think those are all great questions to ask. And they can reach out to the director, via email directly. And, we're never bothered by those questions. Okay. And so, I don't think candidates need to be afraid to reach out as long as they're, asking questions that they're really interested in knowing the answers to and are asking information that isn't readily available.
I'm never opposed to talking to anyone at all. I have had those years where there's people that are kind of always creeping around and stuff, and always trying to, because they're really interested. And I know that they're interested. I think for me, if you really have something you want to talk about and you really have a question that you want to discuss, then I'm 100% always happy anytime to talk to anybody. But like, if you're just coming around because you just want to be seen and you don't really have anything to say, like people will just come up and just like stand next to me. I've already talked to them like an hour ago. Like that's kind of weird to me and like a little bit too much, like coming on too heavy. So I think it's fine so a good scenario would be, let's say that you come and talk to me at the booth or whatever, and you have these few questions you want to ask, and then you move on and you go talk to somebody else and they like tell you something that they do at their program, and you're like, oh, well, I wonder if they do that in St. Louis. So if somebody comes back and says, I was talking to another program and they, have a statistics course that's offered there to help with your research project. Is that something you guys do, or is that something you could help with? It's for something I'm really interested in. Well, that's an appropriate way to reapproach somebody. Yeah. But just like coming back up to just like hang out and say hi and don't really have anything to say, it's like can be a little bit hard. I mean, it's definitely happened to me, especially when we have someone that's already done a rotation at our hospital and like probably ask all the questions they need to ask, and they feel like they need to come back at all these times and say hi again. And sometimes it's a little awkward for sure. So I don't think you need to like keep going back up because there is a little bit of a line that's like probably too much, but I definitely think it's totally fine if you have new questions that you want to ask. Especially as you talk to other programs and hear how they do things. And it might be something that, you didn't ask, but we do. And so you're just trying to piece it all together. It's really, did you get all the information that you need to make your decision? And if you haven't and you have questions, it's always happy to answer. But it's just like hanging around for no reason. That's really not necessary. That definitely can happen sometimes.
I don't think there's ever too many times. It's just the question comes down to, is it become a nuisance versus inquisitive? It depends what the questions is. But I'll be honest, if they're essentially asking for a number, I would say no more than twice, even once or twice max.
I would say it would be acceptable to reach out once in each of those methods. So, if you want to send an email and potentially a follow-up email to say thank you or ask additional questions, that's fine. If you want to come to our booth once at a local meeting, if you want to come to our booth once at a national meeting, but You definitely do not need to come to our booth at mid-year and stand there for the whole 3 hours to talk to us during the showcase, or come back multiple times to do things. That to me is a little much, but I think doing one line of communication each of those ways is perfectly acceptable.